The wind chime above the glass door jingled in the damp Portland afternoon. Misty rain hung like dust, reflecting the turquoise glow of the Hawthorne Diner neon sign. Inside, the clatter of ladles against pans, spoons touching cups, and the smell of dark coffee blending with burnt bacon filled the air. Everything was ordinary, until the door opened, and a young mother nearly collapsed to her knees as she stepped inside. She clutched a 3-year-old girl in her arms. The child's striped beanie was frayed. Her gray sweater was soaked through, her hands trembling as if drained of blood. Her shoes didn't match. Her eyes darted around, not searching for a chair, not for a menu. She was searching for mercy. At the far end of the diner sat Jack Mercer, known as Stone, a middle-aged biker by the window. His faded denim vest bore a small silver cross on his chest, rain still glistening on his leather sleeves. He had just ordered a steak and potatoes, coffee steaming beside him. He stared out at the rain curtain veiling the city, unaware his life was about to be pulled back into a memory too heavy to name. The woman didn't sit. She moved toward Jack's table, then slowly knelt. The gesture sliced the air like an invisible blade. The spoon froze mid-air. The jukebox went silent. Every head turned. "Sir, may I please have your leftovers for my daughter?" she whispered, glancing at the half-full steak plate. The child buried her face into her mother's chest, clutching the damp fabric tight. The question was as small as a thread, yet it unraveled the whole room. Jack set his coffee cup down. His eyes, once lost in the rain, now fixed on the drops tracing down the woman's cheek, unsure if they were rain or tears. Jack Mercer was 48. The veins on his hands told stories longer than any song in the jukebox. He'd once been a mechanic, riding the long stretch from Oregon's coast to Idaho, familiar with the scent of asphalt and the hum of engines like a heartbeat. People called him Stone for his quiet composure, cold as granite. But that was only a shell covering the quicksand beneath him, the past. Around his neck hung an old silver cross. Sometimes, while waiting for coffee, he'd unconsciously pinch it between his fingers. A silent habit of prayer. A year ago, his wife had left him, saying she couldn't live with the thick silence that surrounded him. She took their 5-year-old daughter, June. 7 years later, her name still echoed in his head, like the wind whistling through Burnside Bridge at night. He didn't know where they were now. Portland was wide, but longing was wider. The woman kneeling before him was Elise Carter, 28. She'd worked as a baker's assistant on SE Division until the shop shut down during layoffs. She scraped by with temp jobs, then fell behind on rent, sliding down the slick slope of Portland's rain. Her daughter, Mia, was allergic to dairy, so Elise always carried a cheap bottle of watered-down nut milk. Today, the bottle was empty. Hawthorne Diner was Jack's refuge on days he didn't want to think. He liked the window seat where he could watch people pass by, liked the reflection of lights on wet pavement, liked how Portland wrapped him in rain without asking questions. He thought he was safe inside that thick silence. Until Elise knelt, and June's face appeared in his mind, clear as neon on fogged glass. In the diner, a few customers looked up, then back down. A couple of students whispered, fingers frozen mid-scroll. Behind the counter, Linda, the owner, hesitated, caught between policy and heart. Elise remained on her knees, shoulders trembling, shielding Maya from the sharp stares piercing them like needles. Jack stared at his plate. 2/3 of a steak left, mashed potatoes still warm. Leftovers. The word twisted in him, like someone had named the thing he feared most, what's left behind. What was left of a father who missed his moment, What was left of a family? What was left of an apology never spoken? "I'm sorry." Elise managed a faint smile, as if to show she meant no harm, only a mother out of options. If you're not going to finish, I just want a little for my girl." A snort sounded somewhere, the smug kind from someone safe behind moral glass. A man in a plaid shirt muttered, "Begging for scraps in Portland? Damn." The woman beside him tugged his sleeve, signaling him to stop. Mia looked up, wide-eyed. "Mommy, are there pancakes?" Her tiny voice landed on Jack's chest like a stone. In an instant, he saw June, ponytail tilted, once asking him on a damp afternoon just like this, "Daddy, do we have waffles tomorrow?" The silence inside Jack cracked like wet wood catching fire. He stood up. Elise flinched, a reflex from someone used to endurance. Jack said nothing. He pushed his plate aside and walked toward the counter. His boots were heavy, but it was the only thing he could control. Linda looked up. "2 kids' meals, almond milk, and 1 to go." "Oh. And a bowl of hot soup," Jack said, voice gravelly from cigarettes and long nights, but steady. Linda glanced at Elise, then nodded. "Coming right up." Jack turned back, kneeling to meet Elise's eyes. The sight of a rugged biker on his knees froze the air again. "Not leftovers," he said quietly, just loud enough to be heard, his voice trembling like a string tuned true. "A proper meal." Elise's lips quivered. "Why, would you—" Jack opened his mouth, closed it, drew a breath, coffee, rain, and cold metal from his chain mingling in his lungs. Then slowly. "Because once, I wasn't there for my own kid." Rain drummed harder on the tin roof. The jukebox switched to an old ballad, pouring melody into the silence between tables. Linda carried a tray. 2 steaming kids' meals, a fresh almond milk, a hot cocoa, she'd added that herself, and a container of chicken soup. "For the mother and daughter," she said firmly, setting it down, her eyes locked on Elise like a decision had been made. Jack picked up the containers but didn't place them on the table yet. He reached into his denim vest and pulled out an old leather wallet. Inside was a faded photo. June, age 5, grinning beneath a bunny-eared beanie. He didn't show it to Elise. That was his private fragment. But he looked at it long enough to draw courage from it. "And this," Jack said, pulling out a few folded bills and pressing them into Linda's hand. "Cover today's meal. And send them a few more to-go boxes, enough for a few days." Elise couldn't lift her hand. She hovered between shame and gratitude. Mia's eyes lit up at the sight of the hot cocoa. Jack handed her the cup. "Careful, it's hot," he murmured. Mia smiled shyly. "Thank you, Mr. The word rolled through Jack's chest, striking the wall he'd built for 7 years. He heard something crack, not from pity but from being called back, from being allowed a small step toward the man he once meant to be. A father. A chair scraped. Another biker, Rico, sitting near the door, turned away and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, pretending to check the menu. The 2 students dug into their wallets, whispering, "Let's chip in," slipping a bill into the tip jar. The man in plaid sighed, awkwardly added a $5 bill, saying nothing. No grand gestures, no applause, just a quiet ripple spreading outward, visible, yet wordless. Jack turned to Elise, placing the takeout neatly into a paper bag. "Take this," he said, "so tomorrow's a little easier." Elise held the bag, her hands still shaking. "Why, would someone like you be kind to me?" It wasn't accusation. It was the wound asking why the sky could still open. Jack swallowed hard. He wasn't used to long sentences. But this time, he owed himself a full one. "I once had a little girl," he said. eyes fixed on the wet tile floor. I thought silence was strength. Turns out, it takes everything away. When you stay quiet too long, people think they don't matter. He looked up, and in Mia's eyes, he suddenly saw June's, that same look, waiting for something as simple as a nod. I just don't want another child to wait. Elise bit her lip, tears streaming even as a smile broke through. Then, today I don't have to wait. In that moment, the diner stood still, a spoon mid-air, rain dimming outside. Then, as if a record needle hit the right groove again, life resumed. But softer, because someone had reset the rhythm. Elise stood. She no longer knelt. She bowed to Linda, to the softened eyes around her, then turned to Jack. "My name's Elise. This is Mia." Jack nodded, smiling, a kind Portland rarely saw on his face. Peaceful. He quickly scribbled a number on a napkin, a local charity he once volunteered with, St. John's Pantry. "If you need help, call them. Tell them Jack sent you." Elise gripped the napkin like a fragile ticket. "I'll find work again. I promise." No one asked her to promise. Maybe she just needed to remind herself she still had a choice. Mia raised her cocoa cup. "Bye, Mr. Stone." She pronounced stone like a smooth pebble. The whole diner chuckled softly. Jack crouched and bumped fists with her, gently, as if afraid to break something newly fragile placed in his hands. The glass door chimed again as the two stepped out. The rain had thinned, like a sheer voile curtain over the street. Elise adjusted her daughter's hat, wrapped an arm around the bag of food. On the sidewalk along S.E. Hawthorne Boulevard, a few people waiting for the bus stepped aside, not staring, just making space. A passing bus splashed a streak of brown-white water, the red glow of the bus stop reflected in the puddle like a slow-beating heart. Inside, chatter returned, quieter, softer. Linda set another pot of coffee before Jack. "On the house," she said. No explanation needed. Jack didn't ask. They shared a silence of a different kind, one of gratitude. Rico brushed Jack's shoulder as he passed. "Ride around the river tonight?" Jack shrugged. "Yeah." But when he looked out the window and saw Elise and Mia's silhouettes shrinking in the rain, he knew tonight's ride wouldn't just be about the wind. It would be about mending something broken 7 years ago. As Jack fastened his helmet, the photo in his wallet seemed warmer. He still didn't know where June was, but somehow in this rain-soaked city, he believed invisible arms were out there, open for the children, the mothers, and the fathers who'd lost their way. No one truly knows the battle another carries in a rain-soaked coat pocket. A small act, a proper meal instead of leftovers, can return to someone what's most precious: dignity. Kindness isn't what comes after comfort. Often it's the first loaf of bread offered by trembling hands. And sometimes, kindness doesn't just save the receiver. It frees the giver too, like how Jack found his voice again through one shy word. "Mister?" In Portland, rain falls like an endless story. But within it, a small diner can still be a shelter, a place where we choose, stay silent to feel safe, or speak up to soften the cold around us. Each of us can lay one warm brick on the wet ground, through a look, a cup of coffee, or a napkin scribbled with a number. Today, Jack chose to speak. And because of that, a mother and child walked out of the diner, heads held high. If this story touched you, take a second to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories 365. Where small acts spark great faith. What would you have done if you were in Jack's place? Have you ever witnessed a moment of kindness in a diner, a bus stop, or in the middle of the rain? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might become the umbrella someone out there needs, right when the rain feels heaviest.